Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Massive thanks to the author, PropheticHose, for allowing me to adapt their awesome story. Follow the link in the description to check out more of their works. Today we will be listening to the third part of What If Mirko Became a UA Teacher. If you enjoy, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing down below, and don't forget to hit that bell icon so you get notified when videos go live. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. Chapter 5, Raid. Damn, you're in a real shithole, aren't you? Rumi's agent's voice rings out over the phone. Not the time now, Rumi grumbles as she taps her foot impatiently. Sorry, you've never been this personally involved in a case before. I'm not really sure how to act, now admits as Rumi sighs in agreement. Yeah, I know. Have you had the chance to look into that gas that Midoriya got hit by? Rumi questions, looking out the glass windows of UA's building, waiting to be called in. Rumi hear now's keyboard clack away. From a report after the war, the quirk-destroying gas was all based on the temporary serum. There was a permanent bullet one, but we were never able to track it down. But it was in an extremely limited supply, so I would be surprised if they used it on that kind of attack. Rumi lets out a sigh of relief. At least Midoriya would most likely get his quirk back, even if he's working in a depot-word state for now. That's good. How are you doing, Rumi? Rumi thinks for a moment before releasing a breath she didn't know she was holding. I feel like I let my kids down. I'm the goddamn number 5 hero and couldn't even take down some villains because of some frostbite. You'll get them back, Rumi, I know you will. You've never failed at something so long as you put your mind to it. Rumi gives a small smile at her agent's kind comments. It was a good thing that this wasn't a video call then. Plus you've got all of UA to back you up, there's no way they're getting away this time. Rumi's ears perk up as she hears Knuckles rap against the door next to her. Alright now, I'm up now, I'll talk to you after the raid. You got this, rabbit girl, now chimes before their calls ends as Rumi slips her phone back into its pocket. Standing up, Rumi turns to the door next to her, opening it as she spots the group of heroes ready for the evening's mission. She had been called in to participate in the raid to rescue the missing students and put down the last remnants of the PLF's remaining leaders. But after she started to get violent when she was told she couldn't just bust into where the students were being kept, Nezu told her to take a breather outside. With Nao's great skills at calming down the feral rabbit, Rumi was finally able to relax as she re-enters the war room. It was the same one that was used back during the PLF raids and the final war, a long table with a large whiteboard in the back. Rolled out onto the table was a topological map of what appeared to be a dock, with one of the large warehouses being more pronounced than the others with a large red mark across its roof. Around the table was the part of UA's staff: Izawa, Vlad King, 13, Snipe, Cementos, Ectoplasm, MT Lady and Midoriya. Separated into different groups, each of them seemed to be discussing something before turning to the new member of the room. Standing next to Midoriya was a figure that was a surprise to Rumi, the recently graduated Lemillion wearing his flashy yellow costume. He seemed to be whispering something to Midoriya, who was nodding along before the heroes and Midoriya moved to different spots along the table. And just as Rumi takes an empty spot along the table, she notices Midoriya's fluffy green hair rustle as the white-furred principal pops out of his curls. Welcome everybody. I hope we can all act accordingly to have a swift and safe rescue of our students. Nezu starts the conversation with his usual optimistic cheer. As you know, 2 of our students were kidnapped when one of our school buses was attacked on the way back from a field trip. I'm sure we'll be able to get them back just fine, Lemillion pipes up with his bright expression. But how were they even able to kidnap some of your students again, given everything we saw last year? And why was I invited here? To answer your first question, I allowed our security to grow lax after the war due to the current levels of crime that we have been seeing. With the defeat of the symbol of evil, many villains have gone into hiding or outright given up. With these conditions in mind, I thought it would be best to allow our students to see the ramifications of hero work with their own eyes, out where it truly impacted the lives of the people. Several heads in the room nodded in understanding. And for your section question, we have identified the culprits of this attack to be the last remnants of the Paranormal Liberation Front. Nezu claps his paws together as he finishes his answers. The PLF. I thought we already dealt with them rascals, Snipe speaks up amongst the shock gasps of the rest of the staff. Indeed. And with these villains being the last of the cruel reminder of the war, what better way to shine a light on the next generation of promising heroes than to include the hero of the war himself? Nezu explains, getting a thumbs up from the Tintin-looking hero. plus with Lemillion's help, we have a much greater chance for a complete victory. With some murmurs picking up from the other heroes in the room, Rumi decides that it's her time to speak up. So what's the big plan then? Rumi shouts, gaining the attention of the others. That I leave up to our specialist here. Nezu cheers, tapping his paws against Midoriya's green curls. And that gets Rumi's eyes to widen. How Midoriya could still be in charge of such an important task even when he had lost his quirk was a wonder to the rabbit heroine. His analysis quirk would have been very useful when planning this raid. Thank you Nezu-sensei, Midoriya clears his throat before continuing, with the tracker that I managed to place on Mr. Compress's jacket, we have closed in on the Shikyaku docks as the location where the students are being kept. Cooperation from the local police has confirmed the exact building which the villains are hiding in. Do we know what the motives of the PLF could be? Cementos questions, looking closer at the model of the docks, besides attempting another blow against heroes, that is. I believe it comes down to the two students that they have kidnapped. First, Takakawa Mizuki, Midoriya explains as a projector flickers to life, showing the picture of the named student. With her stoic expression, Rumi recognizes her as the girl with the water-bending quirk in 1A. Daughter of the new Minister of Internal Affairs, part of one of the wealthiest families in Japan post-war. It stands to reason that with the destruction of Ditnerat and the PLF structure, they could be using her as a future bargaining chip to earn funds for their future endeavors. Damn, Rumi didn't realize how some of her kids could have connections to the real big leagues. She should probably look back into their student profiles once this all blows over. Then with a click, the portrait changes to the bulk brown-haired student. Yatsubashi Akari. Nephew of Yatsubashi Rakia, also known as villain name, Redistro, Grand Commander of the Meta Liberation Army and a lieutenant in the Paranormal Liberation Front. With Redistro's successful arrest during the war, they could be attempting to sway Akari to the side of the villains, using his family ties to force him to work for them. And the room descends into chaos at the reveal, as Rumi's eyes widen in surprise with yet another student in her class that she didn't know enough about. Really? Nephew of the guy who killed the previous HSPC president. MT Lady speaks up, I know he's still a student but that's a pretty big deal to keep secret. I assure you that Akari has shown his dedication to the heroic cause, Nezu defends his student, we wouldn't want to hold the actions of someone else against him after all, he is not accountable for his family's crimes. It's true, Midoriya agrees, I've had a few chats with him about his quirk and its relation to a villain's one. He's also getting counseling from Hound Dog to sort through his issues. Either way, he is one of our students so let's focus back on the task at hand. With some mutters of agreement, the room settles back down as they return their attention to the green ebb. On the villain's end, we have identified Skeptic as their current leader. At his hand, both Getten and Mr. Compress have shown up as well. And within their arsenal, Midoriya has had contact with the deployment of quirk-destroying gas. We so far haven't been able to examine it to check if it is a permanent version or not, Nezu chimes in. From the Shihasaikai. I thought we took it all in when we took them down last year. Aizawa pipes up. Rumi notices out of the corner of his eye as Lemillion and Midoriya exchange a glance. And from what she sees, it seems to be out of worry. The very same, I'm currently fine and we'll wait and see once we take them down if they manage to manufacture a permanent variant but for now let's move on, Midoriya confirms to the rest of the room to another round of gasps. We'll be starting the raid at 2200 hours this evening. MT Lady will start the breach by gaining the attention of the villains. Then when Getten is sent in to combat her, Lemillion will join the fray to take him down. Getten will be the strongest villain we will most likely encounter there, given his proximity to the harbor. Midoriya lists their tasks for the raid to the nods of the heroes in the room. Can we get La Brava to once again distract Skeptic before we start to breach? Nezu pops out of his hair with a toothy smile, I'm sure we can. She is hoping to contribute more to heroic causes after all and a useful asset from the war. Great, Midoriya gives a warm smile at the assurance, while he's distracted then by La Brava's digital attack and having Lemillion clearing the path, Mirko will take out his various puppets before detaining him. I'll follow behind to locate the students and get them out. Cementos will deal with containment for collateral damage while the rest of you deal with any other villains that arise. Otherwise, you are on backup. Clear. The rest of the room nods in confirmation while Rumi just looks at the greenette in confusion. Why should you be the one to rescue the students? Vlad King or Ectoplasm could get them out easily enough, Rumi questions, earning her an eyebrow from Midoriya. I'm currently at least risk from any potential quirk-destroying gas they may have ready, the greenhead explains, getting himself a huff from the rabbit. Alright, everybody get ready, we depart in an hour. As the rest of the room clears out, Rumi can only wonder how Midori is managing to still work at his full capacity despite losing his analysis quirk. It almost seemed like he was working even better without it with how focused he was on the plan. But now all Rumi can do is play her part to rescue her kids. The pale crescent moon rises in the twilight sky as the heroes approach the large warehouse on the edge of the sea. A few flickering streetlights illuminate the winding paths connecting the various buildings together, all leading towards the desolate harbor at the edge of Rumi's vision. Standing across the various rooftops surrounding the warehouse, Rumi can spot the different heroes in preparation for their upcoming raid. Behind them, back down in the street, a few hidden police cars lie in wait to arrest the villains for good. To her right, her ear twitches as she hears heavy boots approach her. Turning to see what hero had decided to join her, she's surprised to see Midoriya walking towards her, wearing what looks almost like a hero costume of his own. With a silver respirator handing around his neck, she spots padded armor underneath a green jumpsuit of some kind, with white and red accents connecting towards the white gauntlets she saw his wearing back when the bus was attacked. At closer inspection, the white gauntlets appeared to be filled with all kinds of advanced tech, based on the intricate plates and slight glow under the panels. If she were to guess, it was probably made from the same stuff as her prosthetics. And to close off his outfit was a large part of dark red combat boots, with small pipes sticking out of the bottom of the soles. All in all, if she were to guess what his hero costume would be if he had one, this would be a pretty good representation of it. So, what's with the get-up then, Doc? Rumi questions Midoriya as he looks over the edge at the warehouse across the street. Some prototypes I had been working on. I wanted a way to be able to help train the students if need be, especially against someone that has handled a lot of support tech. Plus being able to help defend the students in emergencies like before would help me feel less useless, Midoriya explains as he clenches his hand, a quiet whirring sound emanating from his costume. Rumi frowns at his final statement. He was the one that still ran after the students even with him losing his quirk albeit temporarily. Are you good for the raid? I mean, you don't have the same hero training as the rest of us. Rumi gets a good look at his face, doing her best to discern the turmoil in his head. Hell, you don't even have a pro hero's license. Can you even legally participate in this? Midoriya scoffs as he snaps at the rabbit heroine. What? Do you think I'll be useless then? Tisk, that's not what I meant. Rumi rolls her eyes as she folds her arms under her chest. Just focus on rescuing the students. Midoriya turns back to face their goal, putting one of his hands to his ear, and my support license gives me emergency right to use my gear with permission for a licensed pro. And luckily there's a few of them around. Rumi sighs as she turns away from him, letting out a loose breath as she steadies herself for the next fight. She was the number 5 heroine, and nobody will stop her. With a wave of his hand, Midoriya calls the start of the raid as MT Lady runs out from a nearby alleyway, growing to her gigantic size as she grabs onto the roof of the warehouse. With a brief tug, Rumi watches as the gigantic heroine rips the flimsy metal roof off the top of their target as the other heroes begin their attack. In the distance, Rumi spots a crowd of small-time villains rush out of the warehouse, firing their quirks towards MT Lady as she continues to tear apart the building. But in a moment, a flash of blue rises out of the nearby harbor as a massive glacier of ice races towards you. The sudden impact sends her into the ground, leaving her imprint in the concrete of the docks. In response, a yellow blur darts across the rooftops around them as Lemillion joins the fray with his signature shout of power. And with a quirk-enhanced blow, the glacier shatters into tiny pieces as the path was cleared for Rumi to enter. Looking to her side, she finds that Midoriya had already left, causing Rumi to smirk as she bounds off the rooftop into the exposed warehouse. With a few swift kicks, she knocks out a few stragglers on her way inside, bouncing from head to head as she enters through the ripped-out doors to the warehouse. Inside she spots a few of Skeptic's puppets running around, as she remembers their look from when they dragged her kids away. Taking in the chaos around her, she watches as all kinds of criminals pour out of the warehouse, trying their best to figure out what was going on. From what she could guess, these had to be the stragglers from the PLF raid, the one that happened in sync with her own at the hospital all the way before the war. But even given the size of this warehouse, it couldn't have been able to fit this many people here as the sounds of quirks and fighting fill the battleground around her. Seeing the direction from which they were all heading out from, Rumi kicks off the ground with the full force of her body, pushing her prosthetic leg to its limit. "Where's the puppet master, Yad Weebs?" Rumi shouts as she batters through the crowd of villains pouring out of the end of the warehouse. As she closes towards the end of the building, leaving a pile of unconscious bodies behind her, she watches as the villains continue to pour out of a large hatch sticking out of the ground. Leaping high into the air, Rumi kicks off the air as she spins towards the ground in a deadly whirlwind. With a crash, the hatch and the ground around it crumbles inwards under Rumi's powerful axe kick, knocking the fodder out and away. Bouncing onto her feet and looking around, she finds herself in a series of hallways underneath the dock. And out of the corner of her eye, she notices one of Skeptic's puppets running away, carrying some kind of device with it as a few others follow. "Luna Rush!" Rumi shouts as she twirls in the air, pulling herself into her chest as she spins off the walls, her prosthetic foot and real one clashing into the hard bodies of the puppets as she watches them collapse onto the ground. Following the trail of puppets, she leaps past them as they try and grab her, bashing their heads in as she reaches the end of their chain, with a few blocking a door at the end of one of the sprawling hallways. With a loud crash, she bursts through the door, sending each of Skeptic's minions straight into the wall in the other side of the room as they slump over defeated. Turning to face the edge of the room, she spots the villain of her charge typing away at his computer as she picks up his mutter under his breath. "No, no, no. Not a third time. That little bitch. How could she try and extinguish the flames of the rebellion? I'll get her back for this." Skeptic mutters as the series of monitors across the walls show a series of dancing cats. "It looks pretty annoying. Hey scrub. I found you." Rumi yells as she springs off the ground, leaving cracks in the concrete behind her. In a twist, she uses her good leg to boost herself off the wall, and with the momentum behind her turn and the strength in her prosthetic leg, it crashes into the sprawling web of cables and computers against the wall as Skeptic screams at Rumi's sudden appearance. But as he reaches out to activate his quirk, Rumi swiftly knocks him out with a blow to the back of his head, courtesy of her metal arm. With a huff, she grabs his unconscious body and slumps him over her shoulder. Having now taken down the leader of the operation, Rumi hops back outside, finding most of the villains on the way back having now been defeated or captured by the police that were now entering the ruins of the warehouse. Exiting through the busted main doors of the warehouse, she spots MT Lady and a few of the other heroes talking as they watched over the bodies of the other major villains in the fight. In a light blue parka, a white-haired villain, Getten if she were to guess, leans back against a police car, his hands trapped in some kind of specialized handcuffs. Next to him was a different black-haired villain, Mr. Compress, wearing a fancy suit and a top hat that had flopped on the ground in front of him with his own handcuffs strapped in front of him. "Sup you, got the nerd here," Rumi greets the group, flopping Skeptic's unconscious ground in front of them. Quickly a few nearby police officers restrain the villain before setting him next to the others. "Ah, glad to see you got him then," you gives a small wave to Rumi. "I'm guessing there weren't any complications then." "Nah, he seemed pretty distracted by that La Bravo lady. He had a whole breadcrumb trail of puppets leading me to him. Didn't even notice me getting there." Rumi barks a laugh before looking back at the ruins of the warehouse. "Has Midoriya gotten the students out yet?" No, I haven't seen him since." You hums thoughtfully before her eyes widen as they watch the green-haired teacher walk out of the destroyed warehouse, the two kidnapped students walking out with him, using his shoulders as support. "Midoriya!" Rumi shouts at the same time as the other heroes as they all rush over to help the students. "Alright, that should be everything then. I saw your work on the way out," Midoriya huffs as he hands off the students to a few waiting paramedics before heading over to the heroes. "Any problems getting them out?" Lemillion asks, his eyes following the injured students. "None at all, they were sedated when I found them, but a sniff of ammonia woke them up quickly," Midoriya hums as he walks over to the villains. "Were they a big pro?" "You, the one in the blue parka, Getten," shouts as he spots Midoriya, eyes widened in rage. "How did you even manage this? How could we lose to someone like you? What, just because he's not a hero doesn't mean." Lemillion starts to argue with the villain before getting cut off again. "He could never be a hero, that quirkless piece of trash." Getten shouts, spittle flying out of his mouth. "Quirkless? But Midoriya had an analysis quirk." Rumi thinks as she looks over to Midoriya, only to see his eyes widen in shock. It was as if he had been accused of a crime in front of a hungry mob. Next to him, Lemillion winces, almost with a look of shame. Yeah, that's right. I know all about that. That gas should have immobilized you for days if our tests were right. But you're here. And that means you're just a powerless quirkless freak. Midoriya winces at each insult before he straightens himself out, staring down at the ice quirk villain. It doesn't matter about someone's quirk or even if they have one, all that matters is how we apply ourselves, Midoriya states to the villain, acting like a scolding teacher telling off a student for an inappropriate comment. And as Getten continues to shout out insults and slurs at the green-haired teacher, the police grab the villains as a police van pulls up behind them, roughly shoving each of them inside before it drives away, leaving the heroes in shock as a few of them stare at Midoriya. Great job today everybody, hopefully we can return to a normal schedule soon. Nezu will deal with the debrief. Thank you for your efforts in returning our students, Midoriya says robotically, giving a bow to the rest of the heroes before he walks away, leaving the rest of them behind. Lemillion quickly runs after him as the other heroes start to murmur between themselves, waiting for the police to finish. But for Rumi, everything was then clicking into place. The use of support gear, the inability to be a hero, his refusal to talk about his quirk. It wasn't that he was insecure about what his quirk was, it was that he didn't have one in the first place. And now, she realizes that Lemillion made the right choice to chase after him while she just stood there like a coward. It wasn't that she didn't like quirkless people, quite the opposite. But she had never really dealt with any quirkless people before, so it was just an utter shock that someone so close to her line of work would fall into that category. Taking a deep breath, Rumi makes up her mind. She needed to talk to him, to apologize to him and to comfort him. It had been a rough few days for all of them, and it appeared that Midoriya was hit the worst. The day after the raid was a busy one. First needing to talk to Now about filling in the forms for the raid so she would be properly recognized for her takedown of an S-rank villain, then talking to the kids about what had happened. They had been given the week off as the teachers prepared for the raid, so when the UA staff appeared earlier that day with their missing classmates in good spirits, they welcomed them back with open arms, quickly organizing a party to celebrate their return. And if someone saw Rumi smile at the sight of their friendship, well, they would need a kick in the mouth. Luckily, both Takakawa and Akari were unconscious for the entire time they had been taken, first being in Mr. Compress's marbles then being sedated. And that meant that there wouldn't be any severe mental consequences from the kidnapping. Hopefully. But the last of her tasks for the day was tracking down her green-haired co-worker. He had been very emotionally distant during the day, just doing his work and talking the minimal amount. She couldn't even guess what kinds of scenarios he was making up in his head about the reveal of his quirk status. Nezu had talked with each of the teachers the morning after the raid, confirming the reveal of Midoriya's quirklessness and the consequences of discriminating against him based on it. But as they were all good heroes, none of them held any ill will against him because of it. But Rumi still felt like she needed to talk to him about it, especially with her earlier comments that had implicitly and directly hurt him. And at the end of the day, with the warm summer breeze, Rumi had changed into much more comfortable and casual clothes to fit the mood. With warm amber light shining through the halls in the later afternoon, Rumi once again found herself entering into the quiet teacher's lounge. And just as she predicted, she finds Midoriya writing away in his notebook, all alone and separated from the rest of the teachers. They had all gone out for drinks to celebrate the successful raid, but when Rumi saw him refuse the invitation, she decided to follow his example. "Hey Midoriya," Rumi greets him with a small wave as she took her seat, spinning around in it before facing him, leaning over the back of her chair. She needed to take off her hero persona to talk with him, to be able to comfort him against the dark thoughts brewing in his mind. Midoriya just responds with a quiet hum, which she could luckily pick up with her sensitive rabbit ears. He looked really nice at the moment, with a button-up shirt and rolled-up sleeves. It did a good job at showing off his developed forearms. "What are you doing in here? The rest of the teachers would have liked you to join for drinks tonight." Working on the final exams for the first years, Nezu's request, Midoriya explains, using as few words as possible. And Rumi sits there in silence, watching him work away in his notebook. The soft hum of the air conditioning unit in the back of the room and the occasional breeze filling the gap in the lounge. She really didn't know how to even start talking to him about everything that had just happened. At least one way without her sounding like a complete asshole. "Let me guess," Midoriya decides to make the first move, "you want to talk about my quirklessness." Rumi winces, was she really that open of a book? I'm just surprised about it, that's all, Rumi admits, brushing a loose strand of hair back across her shoulder. I thought you had an analysis quirk, given your job and how good you were at it. Tisk, yeah, that's what they all think, Midoriya scoffs as he leans back in his chair, running his fingers through his hair. People always assume it has to be a quirk to have that level of analysis, that I need to have some kind of advantage to be that good at it. They never think that it's something that can be learned, just like any other skill. And I think that's pretty cool, dude, Rumi admits, giving a smirk to him as he looks over at her, his emerald eyes staring back at her. I mean, you're buff enough to take most people on in a straight fight, you're clearly strong on your own, you're smart as fuck. Rumi leans over in her chair, placing the hand on her prosthetic arm onto his knee. You being quirkless doesn't mean anything to me, you're still the same guy that helped me with my prosthetics and round up the kids during a rough heroics lesson. Midoriya's face gains a slight tint of pink as he scratches one of his fingers against his cheek. Thanks Mirko-san. That really means a lot to me to hear that, especially from someone like you. The room once again lulls into a soft silence, the tension in the air now cut into little pieces as the two teachers enjoy each other's presence. Rumi, deep down, was still dealing with the consequences from the war, and having someone present was a nice relief for her. So that kid from 2A? Why'd he call you Deku then? Rumi asks, remembering the angry blonde from the sports festival. In the little part of her mind, she does recall somewhere fighting alongside him during the final battle too. Weird. That, Midoriya looks down at the ground, breaking their eye contact. It's supposed to mean Dekunobu, an alternate spelling of my name. Like a useless wooden puppet. Like me. Rumi snorts, his eyes darting up to look at her. I thought it was a cute kid's name, you know, like Dekaroo and all that. Midoriya lets out a soft chuckle, and if that wasn't music to her ears to hear him laugh so earnestly, nope, nothing like that. I didn't have a lot of friends growing up, being the only quirkless person in my school. Nobody wanted to be around me, so I just stuck with Kaken since he was sort of forced to be around me when Auntie wanted a break from him. I think I can get where you're coming from, Rumi hums, her good hand playing with the tuft of her ear, both drooping low from her relaxed state. People just saw me as the girl with the cute bunny quirk, some kind of person to just pet and play around with. Well, your quirk is listed as rabbit, not bunny, Midoriya hums, causing Rumi to bark with laughter. Of course a quirk nerd like you would know the specifics of that, Midoriya blushes at her remark, but I like to hope that we would have been friends if we knew each other back then. You'd probably help me reach up the rankings quicker if we were. That would have been nice. Having any friends before coming to UA, Rumi frowns, sad for the greenette and his unkind past. I couldn't even apply for the hero course back then, you know. Really? Rumi raises an eyebrow at that. Why not? Well, technically, being a hero is just permission to use your quirk to deal with illegal quirk activity. You're trained to deal with quirk-on-quirk combat, so not having a quirk in the first place mean that I couldn't even apply for a license at all, so all the hero schools just put a ban on quirkless people joining the hero course. Wow, that's lame, Rumi scoffs at what she was hearing. I'm sure any of them would accept you now. Maybe, but at least I can use the loophole in a support license to use my support gear in a heroic way. Rumi nods, remembering what he said before the start of the raid. I tried to enter the sports festival but was denied by the HSPC. Nedzu noticed me though and helped me out, giving me personal lessons and gaining me a spot to go to Island to continue with my studies. Shoot, times have changed now. Rumi takes a shot in the dark. UA accepts quirkless people in the hero course now, why not try to ask for a license anyway? Well, with how few young quirkless people there are nowadays, it was more of a publicity stunt than anything else. I think Nedzu might have done it in honor of me, honestly. I mean, I heard you helped out in the war, right? Maybe the HSPC could give you one as a reward or something. Rumi shrugs, cradling her chin in her good hand as she stares at Midoriya, his bright warm smile drawing her in. Oh yeah, I did. Nedzu and I came up with the plans to separate All for One and Shigaraki. You had no idea how stressed I was during that. Midoriya lets out an awkward chuckle. Wait, you made the whole plan for it all? You basically saved my life, the whole world maybe. Rumi's eyes widened in surprise. She just thought it was how he made her prosthetics and probably some other support gear, not all of that. Oh no, that was all of you guys. I was actually in the Flying Fortress, you know, and now Rumi didn't realize how close to danger he got, how close he was to actually meeting her before all of this. Power loader asked me to help maintain the fortress during the fight. May was a hurricane down there. Well shoot, I think with all of that, letting you become an official hero is the least they could do. Rumi laughs, slapping her good hand across his knees, getting him to stiffen slightly. It's not my dream anymore, I just want to help people now. Midoriya looks out the window with a soft smile, remembering something from long ago. When I met All Might, he told me that the work I was doing was saving people in my own way. Right before he passed, in his weakened form he said that I was a true hero, one that he wished everyone could have seen. Turning back to face her, she can see tears starting to form in the corner of his eyes, a wobbly smile crawling across his face. It was tough when I heard he had passed. He was my idol, who I wanted to be, to save people with a smile. But at least I can do it through all of you with my work, my passion, and my life. Rumi stares into his glistening emerald eyes, how it showed how strong he was through it all but how vulnerable he was being to her. And she knew exactly what she needed to say. You are a hero, Midoriya, despite what anybody else says. You've saved my life, you've given me a life to live now. If anybody doesn't think otherwise, send them in my direction and I'll show them how wrong they are. Rumi puts both her hands on his knees, giving him the most honest smile she could to the green Ed. And with that the dam burst, tears flowing like a gleaming waterfall down his freckled cheek. In a swift movement, he grabs Rumi into a hug, eliciting a small yelp at the sudden contact. Thank you Mirko, you don't know how much that means to me, Midoriya says, sniffling through the torrent of tears. Call me Rumi, she says, wrapping her own arms around him, her good one and the one he made for her. I'll try. Our Rumi, Midoriya pulls back, tilting his head and giving her a bright, warm, and kind smile. Rumi pulls him back into a hug as she comforts the larger man. You know, a lot of people would kill for this kind of contact with me, Rumi jokes as she rubs small circles against his muscular back. No shit, I think I've seen a few forum posts about it, Midoriya snorts before laughing, causing Rumi to laugh with him. She thinks she's getting to know the man that was her co-worker. The teacher on quirk theory and support gear, a graduate of I-Island and of UA's support department. The quirkless boy who wanted to be a hero only to find his dream in a new form growing up. And despite it all, he was still so kind yet so strong. He went through tough times and rejections only to come out better and better after each attempt to drag him down. And that was something that Rumi could truly admire. And in Rumi's honest opinion, he was buff and looked really good in basically anything he wore, especially that workshop outfit. He was hella smart and has helped her in numerous ways that she could never repay. And it didn't help that she was sinking into the feeling of his arms, the security she felt being wrapped up by him. Wait a minute. Oh fuck, I think I'm in love with him. Shit. Alright, that's where we'll leave off for the day. Sorry for the shorter episode. Next one will be longer, so I hope that makes up for it. Thanks so much for listening along with me today. If you enjoyed, please like and comment down below. It really helps with the algorithms. I look forward to seeing you next time. Ciao for now, lovelies.